Good morning and welcome to the Week 14 edition of This Week at the Park. I am Brian Tinsman from Redskins.com, joined by CSN Washington's Rich Tandler and Chris Russell from ESPN 980. How you guys doing this morning?
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Doing good great. To have you both back. Haven't seen either one of you in a while.
Hey, good to be here.
It's nice to be here.
Well, I appreciate that, guys. And, you know, the Redskins are coming into their 7th home game of the season, riding a 4-game losing streak. Certainly not where they expected to be at this point. They are out of the playoffs as of last weekend. And you know, this is something that every team is going to go through at some point, except for the 12 that make the playoffs. I just don't think the Redskins expected to be out on December 1st.
No, and you know, neither did I. I didn't think that they were cinched to win the division again or anything, but I certainly didn't see 3-9 and out of it at this point. Especially if you'd told me that virtually, you know, until the last couple of games, while they were still in contention, that virtually everybody would still be healthy. Mm-hmm. You know, they've not had major injury issues. Yes, they've lost Hagerson and Bowen, but they went pretty much after the team was out of realistic contention anyway.
Now, Chris, you know, you're talking about Robert has been very adamant, and, and a lot of the veterans have been adamant that there is no quit in this team and that they still have a lot to play for. But realistically, what do you need to see out of this team over the last 4 weeks of the season?
Well, you know, I mean, I need to see some sort of progress, consistent progress for more than just a quarter or a quarter and a half or a half. And I don't know if it matters, Rich, Brian, if they actually win. I mean, of course, that helps sell the argument of the future, make you feel good. Carolina suffered so much last year, won their last, I think, 3 or 4 games down the stretch, maybe saved Ron Rivera's job. Of course, they have a dominant defense. Sure. We understand that. But helped save Ron Rivera's job, and now look at what they're doing. So maybe, certainly, you want to win 3 out of these next 4. However, what I need then, before they even worry about winning, which of course is what they're worried about, they need to play more than 20 good minutes out of 60. Mm-hmm. And that's on all 3 phases of the ball. Obviously, you don't play 60 on special teams. Or the point is, you need to play, gosh, more than a good quarter and a half on any one particular unit, offense and defense, because that's not what this team has been able to do almost every week, short of 1 or 2 games this year.
Well, you say, you know, special teams playing 60 minutes, but, you know, they against the Giants, they had an outstanding game, except for the one play which really cost them the game. Right. The rolled snap and partially blocked.
And I didn't mean the complete game.
I know, but that's what I mean.
They're not on the field 60 minutes. You know, neither is the offense or defense, but every play is how I should have.
Right.
And would you agree with me? I mean, it's hard to disagree.
Yeah.
That they played a reasonably good first half against San Francisco, played an awful second half on offense. Mm-hmm. Defense wasn't bad, but they were put in a bad spot. Sunday night against the New York Giants, played a pretty good first half, right? Offense, not bad on defense. Not bad on defense. I didn't say great, not bad on defense. In the second half, the defense was pretty good. The offense was non-existent.
Right.
3 points and you mentioned the one special teams blunder, yet the special teams overall was very good up until that point. You go back to Philadelphia. The only thing that clicked in the first half was the run game. The pass game stunk. The defense stunk. In the second half, no run game, no pass game. The pass game came alive in the fourth quarter, but the defense was pretty good in the second. So they have just not been able to get anything in sync, anything in cohesion with each other.
Rich, it really seems like every week there's something new. It's not like, as Chris was mentioning, that there are consistent themes from game to game of failures or successes. It seems like it's just all over the place.
Well, I would disagree. I think the pass rush has been coming from the other team, the pass protection, has been pretty bad. 19 sacks in the last 4 games. To me, that's a consistent theme during this 4-game losing streak. Justin Tuck, 2.5, you know, good player, getting a little long in the tooth. 2.5 sacks all year, 4 sacks of Robert Griffin III. You know, all in the second half, all when they were trying to catch up. So I'd say that's been a theme. Special teams making a blunder at some point that's costly has been a consistent theme as well. You go back, Minnesota, that fake punt thing, which didn't really cost them, but it kind of, you know, deflated some confidence in it. You know, against and then the punt against the Giants. It's just, you know, it's always something. So I'd say those are consistent themes.
Here's what's curious though. you mentioned the second half, and San Francisco, the pass rush teed off in the second half really largely. Second half, Justin Tuck. First half in Philadelphia. Second half, they were fine. No problems there. But the first really quarter and a half. Minnesota, second half. Denver, second half. Dallas, second half. This offensive line, when asked to largely, or the large majority of the time, to be almost exclusively in pass pro, where they can't go to Alfred Morris for whatever reason, whether it be the score, whether it be because he's slipping, whether it be because of injury and game plan, whatever the situation, this offensive line, when asked to be and hold up consistently in pass pro in the second half of a lot of road games, and of course the last 2 home games, is not good enough to hold up. I wouldn't say they've been awful the entire game, but in bunches, in spurts, in groupings of plays and series, they have been awful.
But I don't think that's a surprise. This was a team that was intended to be a run-first team. That's how most Shanahan teams are built, and they're just not as big as a lot of the defensive guys they're going up against.
Okay, well, you know what? You might have to this offseason kind of rethink that.
Right.
You know, this is a passing league. It's great to lead the league in rushing, but it ain't great to be 3-9. You know, has the game changed enough to where you have to think, I need guys who can pass protect first, and then I'll worry about whatever kind of running scheme I'm going to do. Well, it's just something you got to think about.
Well, let me ask you this, Rich. If they're built to run, which we would all agree with, right? And certainly I think everyone on that offensive line would agree with that. Why does this team constantly get away from running the football?
Because teams they'll put 8 in the box, and then you got to beat them.
But you know what? If that is your bread and butter, and I know defenses are taking that away, I get it, and you don't necessarily want to read option yourself to death, because that's part of what got the Redskins in some of this mess. But there are more things you can do than just line up mano a mano when they're loading up 8, 9 in the box, okay? You can play action off of it. You can read zone play action off of it. You can do all sorts of different things to kind of keep them you can screen somebody. Oh, I don't know.
And they've seen a lot of
screen.
success with that.
And
when they've done it.
So my point is, this team, because defenses, say specifically, will show a certain look. They say, okay, you're trying to take away this. We're not going to go toe-to-toe with you and try and beat you down, even if that's our strength. We're going to try and find another avenue to try and beat you. That all makes sense, but you cannot consistently, and I think this is the problem. It's not one game, one quarter, one sequence, one situation, consistently get away from your bread and butter, which has been a problem all year long.
Get a new loaf of bread and get a new stick of butter.
Okay,
maybe.
fine.
You know,
but I mean, if that's your philosophy, right? If that's your philosophy, run the ball. You have to continue to run the ball.
Philosophies sometimes get outdated, and are no longer the right way to do things. It's a passing league. You know, you look at the teams that are on top. They either have you either want a passing offense or you want a defense like Carolina's. You know, one or the other you got to have. I just don't see where a consistent running game, that being your bread and butter, is maybe that's not the way to go. I'm not saying for sure it is or it isn't, but it's not getting the Redskins much of anywhere this year.
One thing that I thought was interesting is that we heard all last year about how this is an offense that can just take advantage of whatever the defense is giving them. They're not able to do that this year, and I'm not sure if that's execution, personnel, injuries, development, whatever that may be. But head coach Mike Shanahan actually talked to the media yesterday about what he expects to see over the last 4 games. Let's hear what he had to say.
Where do you want to see Robert improve the most? I know you're not evaluating technically. You said you're not doing that, but where do you want to see him improve?
You want to improve as an offense. You always compare yourself to the year before, or a good year, and what you want to do collectively in the running game, passing game, and you do that as a group, not necessarily at one position, because it takes everybody to improve. It's just not one person improving. It's Robert improving with the 10 guys around him.
You talk about offense. Last year, you guys ranked 5th in total offense. This year, 7th. You're 1st in rushing this year. You were 1st last year. The one big difference is passing. You went from 1st yards per play, 20th yards per play. how much of that can you pin on the lack of off season? How much of that are things that have played out in games specific to certain actual drops or missed throws or whatever?
Well, that's what I was saying last year. We talked about a passing offense, and I was getting a lot of questions, why are you guys ranked 20th? And I said, well, we are actually ranked number 1 in yards per attempt, and the mindset at that time we were ranked 20th. And now you're ranked 20th, and then, of course, with passing yards, you're 11th. But I agree with your question, is you want to be as effective as you can in the passing game. We're not there this year like we were a year ago. And, we need to get better in that area. That's what we're working on. We've gotten better in the third down area in comparison to a year ago. So that's what we're working on.
That takes us to our first break. And coming up in segment number 2, we're going to talk scoring, we're going to talk more offense, and, of course, Robert Griffin III. Stay tuned. Welcome back to This Week at the Park. And just remember, Redskins fans, to apply for your Redskins Extra Points MasterCard and start earning 2 points for every dollar spent at RedskinsTeamStore.com this holiday season. Guys, going into this last 4-game stretch, the storyline all year has been that this is a top 10 offense that can't put points on the board. They have struggled in the red zone, maybe more than any other team in the league. You're talking about a number 7 offense when you look at yards, and a number 19 in terms of points. That's a huge differential, and another couple more stats to throw at you. First quarters this year, and this includes offense and defense. We know that they've scored a number of defensive touchdowns, 30 points all year in the first quarter. 82 in the second quarter, but of course that is skewed by the Chicago game where they had 21. 68 points in the third quarter, 76 in the fourth quarter, 6 in overtime. Is that differential where they don't seem to be able to get points on the board in the first and third quarters, is that a problem with game plan, execution, failure to adjust to what the defense is giving them? What are the biggest issues there?
I think actually it's not a good sign that they're not able to get points in the first and third quarter, obviously, but I think defenses and offenses therefore adjust as you go along, not necessarily just at halftime. So it's actually a semi-encouraging, amongst many bad signs, that they're able to get things together a little bit in the second quarter, in the fourth quarter, as teams are changing and doing different things, that they're finally able to figure it out. Again, it's not a good thing that they're slow out of the gates of the start of the game or halftime. I'm not suggesting that's not a concern. But what I'm saying is teams adjust on the fly. So they are then able, in the second quarter and fourth quarter, not all the time, to kind of counteract some of that. So if you're looking for a silver lining in the rainbow, that's it. Now, let me ask you this, okay?
All right.
We've talked so much. You just gave all the yards, right? All the stats. Yards. They mean virtually nothing. Yards per play means a little something, okay, fine. But this team, this offense is not a good offense right now, no matter what the yards stats say, because as Brian pointed out, they've stunk in the red zone, and they're 19th in scoring. You need to be able to convert yards into points, and this team can't.
Yeah, I believe they have 12 drives of 50 yards or more that have not resulted in touchdowns. That's, I believe it's tied for the most in the league,
right,
if not the most in the league. They've also been outscored in the first quarter. So not only are they not scoring points, they're giving up points. They've been outscored in the first quarter by more than I want to say it's 58 points. I believe it's 30 to 88.
And they didn't even score on their opening drive, score a touchdown until last week.
Right.
I mean, this has been all season long.
Yeah.
They have 7 games in which they haven't scored in the first quarter at all.
Now, I want to say I appreciate your point, Chris, but it's like saying it's giving me kudos for if I fall flat on my face, I can get up. That's.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not trying to compliment or patronize anybody here, but I mean, a lot of times teams come out house on fire, like the Redskins did against the Giants the other night, and then completely fall apart, right? So if we're asked to kind of pick and choose between what you would rather have, no, I mean, I'd love to have them play a complete game. I'd love to have them come out strong like they did on Sunday night. But here's what I can have. I can't have them go up 14-0 first couple of minutes of the second quarter and then not sniff the end zone again. I can't have them have first and goal at the 12 after Brandon Merriweather gets an interception because Emerson makes a nice play, and then to go -3 yards. I can't have it.
Okay.
So the point is they've got to find a way to, whether it's the first quarter, the third quarter, the second quarter, the fourth quarter, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday in between, holiday, prime time, daytime, they've got to find a way to be more consistent.
Well, that's true. But, back to the first quarter, they have this vaunted 15-play script like I don't know if most coaches do or not. Obviously that needs another look because it's not, it's not getting it done. It's not getting the goal done, which is to take the ball, drive into the end zone.
I've seen it referred to around the park as the first 16.
Ooh.
Which means they're extra special.
But see, here's the thing that you have to remember about that, too, is that there are a number of games where they've been taken out of their script right out of the gate. I mean, they've been in 2 touchdown deficits before you even get through 15 plays. And
sometimes due to their own
right, and sometimes that is due to 3 and outs in the first turnovers, all of those things. Robert Griffin III also talked to the media yesterday, talking a little bit about what he expects for the last 4 games as well. Let's hear what he had to say.
How do you set expectations for these last 4 games? Obviously, you guys are out of it. Very little to play for as far as beyond that. But what do you want to see or achieve after this?
I think you always have something to play for. And I think no matter what, when we step out there on the field, our record doesn't matter. That doesn't come with you out there on the field. We have a job to take care of, and we get to play a game that's a lot of fun. And, losing's not fun. Everyone knows that, but at the end of the day, you still have to show up ready to play, and you just have to make a conscious effort to get better. Whatever it is, when you look at yourself on tape and say, I need to get better at this, make a conscious effort to get better at it over these next 4 games.
You guys have spent a lot of time in NFL locker rooms. You spent a lot of time in this particular NFL locker room. This is a team that we've seen the good and the bad in the last 3 years. We've seen a bad team do poorly. We've seen a good team do exceptionally well. And this year we've seen a good team really disappoint expectations. What are you seeing in terms of the locker room culture? Is this the same as we saw in 2011 where guys are kind of packing up and looking forward to January, or is this a team that you think will actually show up for the last 4 games?
Not that I've seen yet, but I think I think there's a couple things at play here. There are, if you count all of them, including a couple of exclusive rights guys, 20 free agents on this team. Mm-hmm. So they have their, even absent the incentive of the playoffs, they have incentive to want to play well. And that includes the majority of the starting defense, includes your starting wide receiver. Actually, not a whole lot of guys on offense. But then, there are also a number of other players who could be released without a severe salary cap hit. So, maybe that's I haven't counted them, but that's probably another 5 or 10 guys. So if you've got 30 guys playing for their, for jobs next year, basically, I think that is some good incentive. So no, to answer the question, in the locker room, I really haven't seen guys checking out to any extent.
I think, Rich, and that's a great point, while that helps, no doubt, I think the bigger problem is in 2010 and 2011, I mean, let's call it what it is. You knew the coaching staff wasn't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. You knew that the Redskins had a top 10 going into the 2012, 11-12 offseason. You knew they would finish up somewhere in the top 10 in terms of draft pick. Now you have no top 10 draft pick, as we know. You have much uncertainty, let's call it what it is, about every member of the coaching staff. Rich, you just chronicled how many free agents, especially on the defense, and a lot of the veteran leadership of this team. Santana Moss, London Fletcher, even, whatever you want to say, Rex Grossman. I think he has been a veteran mentor to Robert Griffin III and Kirk Cousins. We know about the uncertainty about the coaching staff. While, yes, guys are playing for their job, and I think that helps, I think the situation is a little bit more toxic than it was in 2011 because you knew there was going to be stability at the very top of the organization. You don't know that as we sit here right now.
I don't think that there's any sort of acceptance that this is a foregone conclusion. I think that you saw that in the last game, even though you saw a lot of frustration penalties while they were still very much in the game. You were seeing guys that you don't normally see that upset, that uncomposed, that were really reacting emotionally to what was happening out there. I don't think that these guys are checked out.
No, I don't think they're checked out at all. But I would disagree. I would disagree
no.
a little bit that Pierre Garçon acts emotionally composed all the time. Right. Santana is a feisty guy too. Here's the thing, people are trying to.
Those two flags. He got 2 flags. Those are the first 2 penalties of the season of
right.
any form. So.
Right, but there's been other incidents where, especially Pierre, where he's I thought shown up the quarterback or shown his frustration. Here's the one thing that's interesting. Oftentimes people say, well, penalties, and especially conduct penalties like the Redskins drew, silly penalties, are a sign. Well, they quit on the coach. They're not listening to the coach. The coaching staff is doing a terrible job. You know who's number 2 and number 3 in the NFL in most penalties accepted or most penalties charged for this year? Seattle and Denver, the two best teams in the league. Last year, the Super Bowl champion, Baltimore Ravens, number 2 in the league. Nonsense. It is about the players on game day having composure and not losing their cool. There is no coach alive on planet Earth other than, guys, we got to be smarter. We got to be smart. You can't simulate game day out here. You can't do it. You have to have players that don't lose their cool. And when you're losing and when you're frustrated, that's when it happens.
All right, we're going to take this discussion into segment number 3, talking injuries, talking Kansas City Chiefs. Stay tuned. Coming into segment 3, want to remind Redskins fans, do not miss the Virginia 529 College Savings Classic this Sunday against the Chiefs at FedEx Field. Looking ahead to this, will you be there?
Chris will be there.
You'll be there as well?
Excellent. Unless they kick me out in between now and then.
Well, we'll have to watch the tape. Looking ahead to this Sunday's game, though, you've got injuries that really could play a major factor for both teams. You've got 4 guys for the Redskins that didn't practice, 4 of 8 guys that were receiving treatment, and pretty used players. Reed Dowdy, Brandon Merriweather, Jordan Reed, Trent Williams did not practice yesterday. On the Chiefs side of things, you have 16 players receiving treatment, and 4 of them did not practice as well. And again, also some names there: Brandon Albert, Anthony Fasano, Justin Houston, Dexter McCluster. Of Dowdy, Merriweather, Trent Williams, Jordan Reed, London Fletcher, D. Hall, Darrell Young, all guys that were at least limited yesterday, which one of those guys do they have to have back?
Trent Williams. Next question. I don't think I need to elaborate on
Rich,
that.
guess what?
Hey, we agree?
We don't disagree.
All right.
Fantastic.
But here's
you
the
want to
thing.
see Tom Compton?
Here's the thing. Oh, no offense to Tom Compton. I mean,
Sure.
he certainly needs seasoning. But going against Tamba Hali, and if Justin Houston plays, and that's a big if, you need Trent Williams out there. Even though Trent's been banged up and has not been playing nowhere near
his best.
Trent Williams' capability, or certainly the way he played earlier in the year, you still need him. Because Kansas City, I know their defense has been shredded like mozzarella cheese over the last couple of weeks. Well, guess what? You go against Peyton Manning twice in two and 3 weeks, and Phillip Rivers, and lose Justin Houston and Tamba Hali for periods and stretches of time. You're going to get some bad numbers.
So the Redskins might actually get a healthy Chiefs defense. That's good news.
I think Houston is pretty much out.
Yes, and I believe that Brandon Albert would be as well.
Watch out, and there was a reason why I asked this question yesterday to Robert. Dontari Poe is a beast. And I forgot what he labeled him as. He gave him some sort of kind of descriptive analogy that basically showed. Watching Dontari Poe on tape, and when I watched the Chiefs, that guy, the Redskins, if you thought they struggled against Justin Tuck, look out Corey Lichtensteiger, Will Montgomery, and Chris Chester, if Chris Chester is in the starting lineup.
Ooh. Got some premonition there.
Maybe.
All right.
If.
Aside from those guys, especially on offense, you're looking at hopefully the return of Darrell Young. Is this a matchup where they can finally get the running game back on course? Because, as we've talked about, Alfred Morris has 25 carries for 78 yards in the last 2 games. This is a guy who is about to crack 1,000 yards for the season, has had really, out of 12 games, has probably had 9 really good ones, and really has been a non-factor without Darrell Young in the lineup. Is this a matchup where they're going to be able to get that back under control, get back to a balanced offense, or are we going to see what we saw last week?
Well, I think you have to, hamstring's a very, very tricky thing. And, I've always known this medical staff and Mike Shanahan to be extremely cautious with it.
Sure.
But, maybe at this point in the season, maybe you push it just a little bit to try to get him out there, because you're right. Young he only plays usually about 20 snaps a game, about a third of the snaps, 20, 25 snaps a game. But, those are usually the plays where Alfred's running the ball. He's usually in there in running situations. So, is it a disaster without him? I think it was a disaster. Evan Royster, Logan Paulson trying to do it. Nobody even remotely resembling a fullback. Niles Paul can help out back there, but he's not Darrell Young.
Don't exclude Jordan Reed from this. Not only the attention that he draws as a weapon out there, but also I thought he's improved significantly over the course of the season, and based on what he showed at Florida as a blocker, both in line and in space. And if you go back when this offense clicked, Rich and Brian, as well as it has all year, and it's been limited, so it's not hard to find, the San Diego game, outside of one terrible throw by Robert, who, because, guys were pushed into him on the interception by Lissamore, Jordan Reed was used in a number of different ways in space as a blocker, and freed and sprung Alfred Morris for some big runs in that game. Motioned a lot into the backfield, a lot of triple option looks. I'm not suggesting you want to run triple option, but in addition to DY, Jordan Reed has been a big factor into why this team has not been able to run the ball, both as a threat as a pass receiver that defenses have to respect, especially on third down, but also as a blocker in space.
From a defensive perspective going into this game, does it help that the Redskins theoretically are familiar with Andy Reid and his system?
It's a different system in Kansas City, because he hired Bob Sutton, who was with the New York Jets. So
but kind of knowing him somewhat, I mean, that helps, but I don't think it's that much of an advantage. And
do you think
not
that's
like they did a great job of bottling Andy Reid up when his better seasons here? Anyway.
I think it helps. Yeah, I think it helps Jim Haslett a little bit, even though it's different personnel. But I mean, let's be honest. There's a difference between Alex Smith and Michael Vick, or even Nick Foles. but really than Michael Vick. Say, you know, and there's Jamal Charles pretty good, but there's a difference between him and McCoy.
Well, we will see this Sunday. Remember to tune in every Monday morning or the day after the game for the Monday Morning Redskins Roundup. For Chris Russell, who is on the show, Rich Tandler, and I, who is not.
Chris Cooper.
Thank you for tuning in this week. This has been This Week at the Park. Thanks.